Probably felt the sharp end of supply chain
Oh,
issues.
absolutely. Volatility seems to be the word.
Exactly. So today, we're not just looking at those hiccups. We want to do a proper deep dive into the underlying structure, the strategic thinking behind how goods and information move globally. Strategic Supply Chain Management, or SSCM.
That's right. And our goal today is really strategic. We're aiming to get beyond seeing SCM as just trucks and warehouses,
Never just.
Yes, beyond just logistics. We want to provide a more critical view on how different organizations could be private companies, public sector bodies, even not-for-profits, how they actually design, manage, and crucially control these huge supply networks, both nationally and internationally.
And it's a massive field, isn't it? We're covering everything from, say, strategic procurement practices right through to, well, the really big challenge now, sustainability.
The cultural, ethical, environmental aspects. They're unavoidable.
Definitely. So, to kick things off, maybe we should just ground ourselves in the basics, the language. Getting these core terms right feels pretty important.
Agreed. Let's start with the basic building blocks, the structures. You've got the simplest form, the supply dyad.
Diet. Okay, so that's just two.
Exactly. Two companies trading directly.
Mm-hmm.
A supplier and a customer. Simple, bilateral. Now, if you link several of those dyads together, one after the other,
You get a chain.
you get a supply chain.
Okay.
But as you hinted earlier, real life isn't usually that neat and linear anymore, is it?
No, feels much more tangled than a simple chain.
Precisely. Most significant businesses today operate within a supply network. Think of it as a web, really.
Mhm.
Interconnected chains, multiple suppliers may be feeding into one point, multiple customers branching out.
And the strategy for managing that must be totally different. A web versus a line.
Oh, completely. Managing a chain is about optimizing links. Managing a network, that's about understanding, well, exponential risk, complexity, dependencies. It's a whole different ballgame.
Okay, so within that web, that network, how do we talk about who's who? We need some clarity on position.
Right. It all centers on the focal operation. That's basically the business we're looking at, the one whose perspective we're taking.
Our company, essentially.
Your company, yes. Then the companies you deal with directly, those are your first-tier suppliers and your first-tier customers.
Okay, makes sense. The ones you actually talk to.
But, and this is key for strategy, especially risk, you really need to look further out to their suppliers and their customers. Those are your second-tier suppliers and second-tier customers.
So understanding who your supplier's supplier is, that sounds like it requires a lot of visibility.
It does. And that brings us neatly to direction. We often talk about upstream and downstream in supply chains.
Right. What do those actually anchor for us strategically?
They basically define the flow relative to your focal operation. Upstream is everything on the supply side. Think raw materials, components, services coming into your operation.
Okay, towards the source?
Exactly. And downstream is everything on the demand side,
Yeah.
moving away from your operation towards the final customer.
Got it. Now, here's something our sources really stress, and I think it's often missed. SCM isn't just about physical stuff moving, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's a common misconception. The flow of information is arguably just as critical, maybe even more so in some ways.
Like the nervous system of the whole thing.
That's a great analogy. Think about what flows upstream, information-wise. It's not just purchase orders.
No. What else?
Well, long-term plans, forecasts, requirements, market research maybe that your suppliers have gathered, even ideas for potential new products or services they could offer you. Vital strategic stuff.
Right. And if that gets blocked?
Your strategic planning is flying blind, and downstream information is just as crucial. Delivery confirmations, payment requests, credit information.
The stuff that keeps the wheels turning financially.
Precisely. It's a constant two-way exchange. Products, services, money, and intelligence, all flowing back and forth.
Okay, so this need for visibility for managing these flows, it leads to big strategic choices about how much of the network you actually control, right?
Yes. Two key concepts here, often seen as opposites. First, there's vertical integration, or
Vertical integration, that means owning more pieces of the chain.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It's about the extent to which your business owns the network it operates in. If you buy your suppliers, that's backward integration.
Like a car maker buying a battery factory.
Perfect example. And if you buy the businesses that distribute or sell your product, like the dealerships.
That's forward integration.
Exactly. 6 is really a strategy about control. You take on more risk, maybe, but you aim for more certainty, more stability in your supply or your market access.
Okay, control and stability. What's the alternative then?
The strategic counterpoint is disintermediation.
Disintermediation. Sounds a bit cutthroat.
It can be, strategically. It means you decide to bypass your immediate neighbors in the chain. You cut out the middleman.
So going around your usual supplier to deal directly with their supplier?
Or going around your distributor to sell directly to the end customer. Yes. The goal is usually to streamline costs, improve speed, or, crucially, get direct access to information, either from the original source or the final user.
So it's agility and cost, perhaps, over that total control of Z.
That's a good way to put it. Agility versus control. It's a fundamental strategic trade-off.
Understanding that trade-off is vital. Okay, we've got some terms down. Now let's add some context. Our sources really emphasize that we can't grasp today's supply chain issues without looking back, right? The history matters.
Absolutely. The history of operations and supply management isn't just, academic. It shows us the influences that shaped how we think and operate today. It's quite a story.
Where does it start?
Well, if you go way back, say before 1750, you're mostly in the era of craft production. Think cottage industries.
Everything made by hand, bespoke.
Pretty much. Output was customized, unique, and obviously very low volume. Things really kick off with the Industrial Revolution.
Right. Britain, Western Europe, the U.S. mainly.
Yes. That period gives rise to the first formal thinking about organizing work, factory management, and the process school in the 19th century. Think Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations in 1776, the division of labor. That's the foundation for scaling up.
Making things in factories became possible, then normal.
And that leads into the early 20th century, say 1900s to the 1940s. Now we see the rise of production management. The focus shifts to mass production.
Lots of identical items, low variety.
Exactly. And two major schools of thought emerge here. You've got the scientific management school, think Taylorism, time and motion studies, standardization for efficiency.
Measuring everything.
Measuring everything. But then, almost in reaction, you get the human relations school, Mayo, Hawthorne studies, realizing that, hang on, people aren't just cogs. Motivation, group dynamics, the socio-technical system that matters hugely too.
Right, so you need both. The efficient process and engaged people. What happens next? War often drives innovation.
It certainly did here. The 1940s to the 1960s saw the emergence of the Operational Research School, really boosted by World War II.
Lots of maths.
Lots of maths. Quantitative problem solving. This era gave us tools we still rely heavily on today. Sophisticated inventory management techniques, statistical quality control, and, crucially, the very first uses of computers in managing operations. War planning demanded data and optimization.
So the seeds of data-driven supply chains were sown then.
You could definitely say that. Which brings us to the modern era, roughly the 1960s to today. This is where things really converge and broaden out.
From just production to operations and supply management.
Yes, and the output goal shifts again. Now it's about achieving mass production, but with high variety. Customization at scale.
The holy grail, really.
It is, and several things make this possible. Obviously, advanced computer applications take that early OR work and make it incredibly powerful. Then there's the service revolution, realizing operations principles apply just as much to services as to manufacturing.
Right, managing a call center or a hospital ward has operational challenges.
Exactly. We also see the development of operations strategy as a distinct field, thinking about how operations can be a competitive weapon. And, of course, the huge influence of Japanization.
Lean manufacturing, Toyota production system.
Kanban, JIT, Kaizen, all those concepts fundamentally reshaped thinking about efficiency, waste, quality, and inventory.
And tying it all together, especially in recent decades.
The massive expansion of the internet. That's the ultimate integrator, isn't it? Suddenly you can have real-time visibility and control, linking suppliers, producers, customers across the globe in ways unthinkable before. It made true strategic supply networks feasible.
That's a great overview of the general operations evolution. What about the supply side specifically? Did that follow the same path?
Similar, but with its own timeline. Back in the 40s to 60s, the supply aspect was really seen just as inventory management and logistics. Necessary functions, but quite siloed.
Just managing stock levels and transport.
Pretty much. Then, in the 1970s, purchasing or procurement started to emerge as its own distinct professional function.
Getting its own department, its own managers.
Right. The big conceptual jump happens in the 1980s. That's when purchasing starts being talked about as part of supply chain management, SCM. It's not just buying stuff anymore. It's managing a flow, a sequence of activities.
A broader perspective.
Definitely. And then, by the 1990s, it climbs another rung. Supply management gets recognized as critical for strategic decision-making. It gets a seat at the top table.
So it moves from how much did this part cost to how does our relationship with this supplier impact our overall business strategy and risk?
Exactly that. From tactical cost focus to strategic value and risk management. That's the journey.
Okay, that historical context is really helpful. It explains why SCM is so complex and strategic now. So let's pivot to the present day. Given all this history, this complexity, this global reach, what are the biggest headaches, the main challenges facing these modern supply networks?
Oh, the list is pretty long, but a few stand out. One major consequence of going global is simply long lead times.
Things just take ages to get from A to B.
They do. And that means you're making decisions, placing orders, committing resources months, sometimes even years in advance. It turns planning into a high-stakes guessing game about future demand.
And demand itself isn't stable, is it? Customer expectations.
Constantly rising, constantly shifting. People want more customization, faster delivery, lower prices. That puts incredible pressure on the entire system. Capacity, flexibility.
And costs seem to be going haywire, too.
Definitely. You've got rising labor costs, both at home and often overseas. Logistics and transport costs are notoriously volatile, depends on fuel prices, shipping capacity, and all this uncertainty feeds into increased risks.
Risks of disruption, risks of delays, financial risks.
All the above. Political instability, natural disasters, supplier failures. A complex global network has so many potential points of failure. And then there's the elephant in the room.
Sustainability.
Sustainability.
Yeah.
Huge pressure now, socially and environmentally. It affects everything. Where you source materials, how things are made, transportation methods, end-of-life disposal. It's not optional anymore. It's becoming a core strategic driver.
So dealing with long lead times, fickle customers, volatile costs, massive risks, and the sustainability imperative. It sounds daunting. How do companies actually set themselves up for success? What needs to be in place?
Right. These are what we might call the enablers of effective supply management, the prerequisites, really. They fall into external and internal categories.
Okay, what do you need from the outside world?
Well, ideally, you need relatively conducive demand patterns. Building and managing complex, expensive supply chains makes most sense when you have high volume, reasonably regular, and predictable demand. Choppy, unpredictable demand makes strategic SCM much harder.
So stability helps. What else externally?
You generally need a conducive external power structure. Basically, you need some clout. If you're a tiny company, you can't easily dictate terms or demand transparency from huge suppliers or customers. You need sufficient influence to get their buy-in for your strategic initiatives.
Makes sense. You need some leverage. What about inside the company?
Internally, it mirrors the external need for buy-in. You need conducive internal power structures, meaning everyone inside needs to be pulling in the same direction. The supply chain strategy can't just be something the procurement team cares about. Operations, finance, marketing, they all need to understand it, support it, and integrate it into their own plans. Silos kill strategic SCM.
Getting that internal alignment, crucial.
Absolutely. Then you obviously need the right internal capabilities. You need the people with the skills and knowledge to actually design, specify, manage, and continuously improve these complex systems. Talent is key.
You need the know-how.
You do. And finally, you need the internal resources. Let's be frank. Developing strategic supplier relationships, implementing sophisticated IT systems for visibility, managing global logistics, mitigating risks. It all costs money, time, and effort.
It's not cheap.
It's definitely not. So without adequate resources, budget, people, technology, even the best strategic supply chain plan will just stay on paper.
Okay, so stable demand, external clout, internal alignment, the right skills, and enough resources. That really paints a picture of why this is so challenging, but also what good looks like.
I think summing up, what we see is that international operations and supply management is just inherently dynamic. It's always changing, always throwing up new challenges, both structurally and strategically. But hopefully, by getting a handle on the basic language, the dyad, the network, the flows, and understanding some of those core strategic ideas like VI or disintermediation.
You've got the toolkit to start thinking critically about it.
Exactly. You had the lens needed to start navigating that complexity.
Yeah. So, looking ahead then, our sources touched on these really diverse global ways of doing things. You've got, the sort of dominant U.S. North American approach, then the Japanese lean model, Korean high-tech focus, different European strategies, a real mix.
Very different philosophies sometimes.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Given that huge variety in cultural and technological approaches globally, and layering on top this absolute imperative now for environmental and social sustainability, how well can any single strategic supply chain framework really adapt? Can one approach truly integrate all these varying, sometimes conflicting models effectively?
That's the big question, isn't it? A real strategic puzzle for the coming years.
Something to think about as you look at your own supply networks. That's all we have time for on this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.